There is a specific kind of cold that has nothing to do with the wind whipping off Lake Michigan. It is the bone-deep chill of realizing you have set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, and they still left you to freeze. For Zara Williams, that realization hit at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve outside the Berghoff restaurant, exactly 30 minutes before she witnessed an execution that would force her to choose between dying in the snow or becoming the property of a monster. Welcome back to Tales by Moonlight. Before this story begins, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, like, and share. Now, let's begin. Zara Williams' feet were screaming. Not just hurting, screaming. A sharp, rhythmic agony that shot up her calves with every step she took on the hard tile floor of the Berghoff. She had been on her feet for 14 hours. Double shift, Christmas Eve. The holiday rush in Chicago wasn't a joke. It was a combat sport. She adjusted her tray, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack the dry skin on her face. "Here's that extra champagne, sir. On the house." The man in booth 7 didn't even look up from his diamond-clad wife. He just waved a hand, dismissing her like she was furniture. Invisible. That's what she was. Just a pair of hands to refill glasses, a back to carry heavy trays, and a name tag that nobody bothered to read. She limped back to the kitchen, the smell of schnitzel, stale beer, and industrial cleaner assaulting her nose. She leaned against the stainless steel counter, pulling her phone from her apron pocket. One hope. Just one. Marcus. He was supposed to pick her up. He'd promised. After she lent him that $800 last week, money she had scraped together for her rent, money she absolutely didn't have, he had sworn he would make it up to her tonight. "Christmas Eve, baby. Just you and me. I'll make it special." She unlocked her screen. One new text. "Can't make it. Actually, I can't do this anymore. We're on different paths. You're too intense. Sorry. Merry Xmas." The air left the room. The kitchen sounds, the clattering plates, the shouting line cooks, the sizzling grease, faded into a dull roar. He didn't just dump her. He dumped her via text. On Christmas Eve, after taking her rent money. Zara stared at the screen until the words blurred. $80,000 in student loan debt from a nursing degree she couldn't afford to finish. A maxed-out credit card. And now, single and broke, in a city that cost more to breathe in than she made in a week. "Zara, table 4 needs water." She shoved the phone into her pocket. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford to cry. Mascara cost money. Have you ever felt this worthless? Like no matter how much you gave, how much you sacrificed, you were still just a stepping stone for someone else? Most people would break right here, but Zara is still standing. Drop a heart in the comments if you know exactly what she is feeling right now. 11:30 p.m. The wind on Adams Street hit her like a physical slap. It cut right through her thin coat, a thrift store find that was no match for a Chicago winter. The other servers were heading to a bar in River North, laughing, huddled together. They didn't invite her. They never did. Zara turned her collar up and started walking. She should go to the train. She should go home to her empty studio in the South Side and eat instant ramen and figure out how to pay rent with $0. But her legs wouldn't take her there. Instead, they carried her toward Millennium Park. The city was glowing. Millions of lights wrapped around trees, mocking her with their festive cheer. Couples walked hand in hand, breaths clouding in the air, looking at the giant Christmas tree. Zara felt like a ghost haunting someone else's happy life. She walked until she reached Cloud Gate. The Bean. Usually, this place was swarming with tourists taking selfies in the reflective steel. But at nearly midnight on Christmas Eve, with the temperature dropping to single digits, it was deserted. just a massive silver drop of mercury reflecting the distorted skyline. And her. She looked at her reflection in the curved metal. Dark circles under her eyes. Cheap uniform, hair frizzy from the humidity of the kitchen. "You're pathetic," she whispered to the steel. "He used you, Zara, and you let him." Pop. The sound was soft, like a champagne cork. But it wasn't champagne. Zara froze. She knew that sound. Growing up where she did, you learned the difference between a car backfiring and a gunshot before you learned long division. She held her breath, stepping silently behind the curve of the sculpture. Voices. Low. Urgent. Not English. Korean. She peeked around the silver edge. 4 men stood near the tree line, silhouettes against the snow. 3 of them were standing. 1 was on his knees. The man on his knees was sobbing, his hands clasped in prayer. The man standing in front of him? God. Even from here, even in the dark, he looked like a wraith. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a long black wool coat that looked tailored to the inch. He didn't look angry. He didn't look frantic. He looked bored. He raised a hand. Metal glinted under the park lights. "No," Zara breathed. The tall man didn't hesitate. Pop. The kneeling man crumpled forward. Red bloomed on the pristine white snow. It was so bright, so vivid. Zara clamped a hand over her mouth, stumbling back. Her cheap, worn-out shoe, the one with the split sole, caught on a patch of ice. Scrape. It wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of the park, it sounded like a scream. The tall man's head snapped toward her. Across the distance, his eyes locked onto hers. She couldn't see the color, but she felt the weight. Cold, calculating, lethal. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He just pointed a gloved finger at her and spoke a single word to his men. "Grab her!" Zara ran. Adrenaline dumped into her system, hot and electric. She scrambled away from the bean, her feet slipping on the icy pavement. "Hey, stop!" a voice shouted behind her. She didn't stop. She sprinted toward the stairs leading to the Millennium Lakeside garages. If she could get underground, maybe she could hide. Maybe she could find a security guard. Her lungs burned. The cold air tasted like copper and fear. She heard heavy footsteps pounding behind her. Closer. They were faster than her. Stronger than her. She burst through the doors of the parking garage, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Rows of concrete pillars, empty cars. She turned a corner, her shoes slapping against the concrete, and slammed straight into a wall. Not a wall, a chest. Solid. Warm. Wool. Zara gasped, looking up. It was him, the killer. How did he move that fast? He stood there, calm as a statue, while she hyperventilated. Up close, he was devastating. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass. Hair perfectly styled despite the wind, and eyes that were so dark they looked like the void itself. He smelled like expensive whiskey, cedarwood, and the metallic tang of gunpowder. "Please," she choked out, backing away. "I didn't see anything, I swear." Footsteps echoed behind her. The other men, his soldiers, skidded around the corner. They saw him and froze, bowing low. The tall man didn't look at them. He only looked at her. His gaze swept down her body. It lingered on her trembling hands, her Berghoff waitress uniform. And then it stopped on her feet, her wet, ruined shoes. Something flickered in his eyes. Not pity? Anger? "You are shaking," he said. His voice was deep, accented but flawless, a baritone that vibrated in her chest. You just killed a man. He was a traitor." He took a step toward her. "And you are a witness." Zara hit the concrete pillar behind her. Trapped. He placed a hand on the pillar beside her head, leaning in. He was so big. He blocked out the light, the world, everything. "I won't tell," she whispered. Tears leaked out, hot against her frozen cheeks. "Please, I just want to go home." "To where?" He tilted his head. "You are walking alone in a park at midnight on Christmas Eve in shoes that are falling apart. Who is waiting for you?" The question hit her harder than the fear. No one. No one was waiting. Marcus was gone. Her mom was gone. She was completely alone. The realization made her sob, a broken, ugly sound. The killer's expression shifted. He reached out. Zara flinched, closing her eyes, waiting for the bullet. But it didn't come. Instead, a warm, gloved hand cupped her jaw. His thumb brushed away a tear. The touch was shocking, gentle, paradoxical. "Open your eyes," he commanded. She did. "I am going to give you a choice," he said softly. "You can stay here, in the cold, with what you have seen. My men will handle you." He paused, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "Or you can get in my car." A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. Beside them, silent as a shark. The back door opened. Inside, it looked warm. Leather. Safety. "If you get in that car," Kang Min-jun said, his eyes locking her in place, "you belong to me until I decide you are not a threat." He leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. "But I promise you this. You are safe now." Zara looked at the snow, at her ruined shoes. Then she looked at the monster offering her a hand. She took it. The drive to River North was silent. Not the awkward silence of a bad first date. The heavy, suffocating silence of being in a cage with a tiger that hasn't decided if it's hungry yet. Zara sat pressed against the leather door of the SUV, watching the city blur past. Every streetlight was a reminder of the life she was leaving behind. The poverty, the struggle, the cold. Beside her, Kang Min-jun was typing on his phone. He didn't look at her. He didn't check the locks. He didn't have to. He radiated such absolute authority that the idea of opening the door and tucking and rolling onto the highway seemed not just stupid, but impossible. The SUV turned into the private garage of a glass spire that pierced the Chicago skyline. The kind of building where the doormen wore suits nicer than Zara's funeral clothes. Min-jun got out. He didn't grab her arm this time. He just held the door open and waited. A test. Will she run? Zara looked at his hand on the doorframe. Leather gloves. No blood visible. She stepped out. "Smart choice," he murmured as she passed him. The penthouse elevator didn't have buttons. It scanned his retina. When the door slid open on the 60th floor, Zara stopped breathing for a second. Floor to ceiling glass. The entire city of Chicago lay spread out below them like a glittering circuit board. The Chicago River wound through the buildings, black and icy. Inside, it was warm. It smelled of teak and expensive leather. "Sit," Min-jun commanded. He pointed to a charcoal sofa that looked like it cost more than her student loans. Zara sat. She didn't want to get stains on it. Min-jun walked to a crystal decanter and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He handed her one. "Drink. It will stop the shaking." Zara took it. Her hands were trembling so badly the ice clinked against the glass. She took a sip. Fire. Top-shelf whiskey. Smooth, smoky, dangerous. Min-jun sat opposite her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. The predator was focused now. "You said you had a bad night," he said, "before you saw me. It doesn't matter." "Everything matters." His eyes bore into hers. "You were crying at the bean. Why?" Zara looked into her glass. It felt absurd to talk about her pathetic life to a man who just executed someone, but the whiskey was hitting her empty stomach, loosening the knot in her chest. "My boyfriend," Ex-boyfriend. Dumped me via text. Min-jun didn't blink. Go on. He borrowed money from me last week. $800. For a car repair. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. I didn't have it. I put it on a credit card I haven't paid off in 6 months. And tonight, he took the money and left me. Min-jun's expression didn't change, but the air in the room grew heavier, colder. He took from you, Min-jun said slowly, when you had nothing to give. Yeah, I guess I'm an idiot. No. The word was sharp, a gunshot. He is a thief and a coward. Min-jun stood up. He paced to the window, looking out at his city. I have a proposition for you, Zara. I don't have any money, she said quickly. He turned, a dark amusement curling his lip. I don't want your money. I have enough money to buy this city 3 times over. He walked to a wall safe, hidden behind an abstract painting. He spun the dial, opened it, and pulled out a stack of cash, thick, bound in bank bands. He tossed it onto the coffee table in front of her. Thud. Zara jumped. $50,000, Min-jun said. Zara stared at the brick of cash. It was impossible. What? Stay here, he said. Until New Year's Day, 7 days. He walked closer, looming over her. I need to make sure you won't talk. I need to keep you where I can see you until the heat from tonight dies down. He placed a hand on the back of the sofa, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. In exchange, you get $50,000 and my protection. And if I say no? Then you walk out that door, and my enemies find you before morning to ask what you saw. Or the police find you and ask why you were running from a murder scene. He tilted his head. Or you stay here. You eat my food, you sleep in my guest room, and on January 1st, you walk away debt-free. Zara looked at the money. $50,000. That was 2 years of double shifts. That was freedom. What do I have to do? She whispered. Min-jun's gaze dropped to her lips. Exist. Be near me. Let me look at you. His thumb grazed her jawline. And obey me. The word sent a shiver straight down her spine. Not fear, something else. Okay, she breathed. I'll stay. Good. He straightened up, buttoning his suit jacket. Now, stand up. Why? Because we have one errand to run before we sleep. Min-jun's eyes were hard as flint. Give me the address. Whose address? The thief, Marcus. The drive to the south side took 30 minutes. Zara sat in the front seat this time. Min-jun drove. He drove like he did everything else, with terrifying precision. One hand on the wheel, eyes scanning the darkness. They pulled up to Marcus's apartment complex. It was a dump. Peeling paint, overflowed dumpsters, music blaring from a second-story window. Zara felt a wave of shame. This was her world. And sitting in this distinctively expensive SUV, Min-jun looked like a king visiting a landfill. Stay in the car, Min-jun ordered. He might be violent, Zara warned. He gets angry when... Min-jun looked at her. He didn't speak. He just looked at her with an expression of such supreme confidence that her words died in her throat. Lock the doors, he said. He got out. Zara watched through the tinted glass. He didn't run. He didn't sneak. He walked up the cracked sidewalk in his $5,000 coat, the wind whipping his dark hair. He disappeared into the building. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Zara's heart was hammering against her ribs. What was happening? Was Marcus fighting him? Marcus had a baseball bat behind the door. Suddenly, the building's front door opened. Min-jun walked out. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't running. He was adjusting his cufflinks. He walked to the car, opened the door, and slid into the driver's seat. The smell of cold air and expensive cologne filled the cabin again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of crumpled bills. 20s, 10s, 5s, $800. He took Zara's hand and pressed the money into her palm. "It is all there," he said. "Plus interest." Zara stared at the money. What did you do?" Min-jun put the car in gear. "I asked for it back." "Marcus gave it to you?" "He was very eager to return it." Min-jun pulled away from the curb, his face impassive. "Was he alone?" Zara asked, a sick feeling in her stomach. "No, there was a woman." Min-jun glanced at her. "He was spending your money on pizza and cheap wine for her." The betrayal shouldn't have hurt. She knew it was coming, but it still stung. Did you hurt him?" Min-jun merged onto the highway, heading back toward the lights of the city. "I didn't have to touch him." He flexed his fingers on the steering wheel. "I simply told him who I was, and I told him that you belong to me now." Zara's head snapped toward him. "I what?" "I told him," Min-jun said, his voice dropping an octave, "that if he ever says your name, looks at you, or breathes in your direction again." He paused, the red taillights of the car in front of them reflecting in his dark eyes. I would peel the skin from his bones while he watched." Zara shivered. "What did he do?" "He wet himself." Min-jun said it without humor, just a fact. "Men like him are only strong when they are preying on women like you. When they face a real monster, they break." He reached across the console. His hand covered hers, the one holding the crumpled bills. His grip was warm, large, protective. "Keep the money, Zara. Burn it, spend it, I don't care." He squeezed her hand, claiming her. "But never let a man like that make you feel small again." Zara looked down at their joined hands. His knuckles were scarred, dangerous, but his touch was gentle. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt chosen. Zara felt guilty for a split second. And then she realized Marcus deserved every bit of that fear. Min-jun didn't just get her money back. He gave her dignity back. Have you ever let someone walk all over you because you were too nice to fight back? Don't be like the old Zara. Hit that like button if you know your worth, and if you're glad Marcus got what was coming to him. They arrived back at the penthouse at 2 a.m. Zara was exhausted, her adrenaline crashing. Min-jun led her down a hallway to a guest room. Guest room was an insult. It was bigger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed, Egyptian cotton sheets, a view of the lake. "Sleep," Min-jun said, standing in the doorway. "What about the deal?" Zara asked, clutching her uniform. Min-jun's eyes darkened. He stepped into the room. The air changed instantly. He walked toward her until she backed up against the bed. He reached out and hooked a finger under the strap of her apron. "The deal stands," he murmured. He tugged the apron loose. It fell to the floor. Then he reached for the top button of her blouse. Zara held her breath. His fingers grazed her skin. Hot. He undid the first button. Then he stopped. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. It was chaste, confusing. "Sleep, Zara," he whispered against her skin. "I want you rested." He pulled back, his eyes burning with a hunger he was barely restraining. "Because tomorrow, I am going to dress you like a queen." He turned and walked out, closing the door softly, locking her in, safe, and completely, utterly his. December 26th. Morning hit the penthouse like a silent explosion of gray light. Zara woke up slowly, surfacing from the deepest sleep she had experienced in a decade. For a few disorienting seconds, she didn't know where she was. The mattress was too soft. The sheets were too smooth, Egyptian cotton with a thread count that probably cost more than her car. There was no sound of the L train rattling her windows, no shouting neighbors, no draft leaking through the cracked frame she'd stuffed with towels. There was only silence. Heavy, expensive silence. She rolled over, blinking against the light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Lake Michigan sprawled out below her, a churning expanse of slate-gray water capped with white foam, stretching endlessly into the horizon. She was in the sky. Zara pushed herself up, the duvet sliding off her shoulders. She was still wearing the oversized t-shirt Min-jun had given her last night. It smelled like him. Cedar, rain, and something muskier, like skin heated by whiskey. She pulled the collar up to her nose, inhaling deeply before she could stop herself. God, get a grip, Zara. She was a prisoner, a paid companion. She wasn't supposed to be sniffing his laundry like a lovesick teenager. She looked at the digital clock on the floating nightstand. 10:14 a.m. She gasped. The panic was instinctual, drilled into her by years of survival mode. I'm late. I'm late for the lunch prep. The manager is going to kill me. She scrambled out of bed, her feet hitting the plush rug, her heart hammering. Then she remembered. The park. The gunshot. The snow. The deal. She sank back onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. She wasn't late. She didn't have a job. She had $50,000 in a safe and a killer in the next room, who had bought her life for a week. Knock. Knock. 2 sharp raps, authoritative. Enter! She croaked, clearing her throat. The door opened. Kang Min-jun walked in, and the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees and heat up all at once. He looked different. Last night, in the suit, he had been the Kang Pai boss, armor-plated and untouchable. Today, he looked dangerous in a human way. He wore black slacks that broke perfectly over leather loafers, and a black cashmere turtleneck that clung to him, emphasizing the width of his shoulders and the thick muscles of his arms. He looked effortless, wealthy, and predatorily calm. In his hand, he held a sleek black garment bag. His dark eyes swept over her, taking in the messy hair, the oversized shirt that barely covered her thighs, the bare feet buried in the rug. He didn't smile, but his gaze lingered on her legs, heavy and physical. You slept well? He stated. Yes, I slept late. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for sleeping. You looked like you hadn't rested in years. He walked further into the room, tossing the garment bag onto the foot of the bed. Shower. Fix your hair. We are leaving in 45 minutes. Zara stood up, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. Leaving? I thought the rules were that I couldn't leave. The rule, Min-jun corrected, walking toward the chair in the corner where she had draped her Berghoff uniform, is that you cannot leave alone. He reached down and picked up the uniform. He held it by the strap of the apron, lifting it away from his body like it was a biohazard. The cheap polyester hung limp in his hand, stained with grease, smelling of stale beer and minimum wage. And you are never wearing this again. He turned and walked toward the sliding glass door that led to the balcony. Hey! Zara lunged forward. Wait, that's my uniform. I have to return it, or they dock $50 from my final paycheck. Min-jun slid the door open. The biting wind of a Chicago winter whipped into the room, instantly chilling the air. He stepped out onto the concrete terrace. Zara followed him, shivering as the cold bit through her thin t-shirt. Min-jun, stop! I need that! He ignored her. He walked to a sleek, gas-powered fire pit in the center of the seating area. With a flick of his wrist, he turned the dial. Flames erupted through the black glass stones, dancing orange and blue against the gray sky. You don't need it, he said calmly. He produced a silver Zippo lighter from his pocket. He didn't even look at her. He held the lighter to the hem of the apron. The cheap fabric caught instantly. It didn't burn clean. It melted. Black smoke curled up, acrid and chemical-smelling. Min-jun watched it catch, his face impassive, like he was watching a cigarette burn out. Then he dropped the flaming bundle into the fire pit. Zara watched in horror as her livelihood, the uniform she had sweated in, cried in, bled in, curled into a blackened, shriveled crisp. You bought the restaurant? She whispered, remembering his threat from the night before. I finalized the purchase at 8 a.m., he said, dusting his hands off as if removing the taint of poverty. Consider this your resignation. He turned to face her. The wind whipped his dark hair, but he looked immovable, a statue carved from obsession. You are not a servant anymore, Zara. Stop dressing like one. He stepped closer, forcing her to look up at him. You are with me now, and no one who belongs to me wears polyester. He gestured to the bedroom. Put on the dress in the bag. We are going shopping. The SUV was waiting in the garage, not the one from last night. This was a Range Rover, matte black, tinted so dark it felt like a cave. Min-jun drove. He drove with one hand on the wheel, relaxed, confident. Zara sat in the passenger seat, wearing the dress he'd brought her. It was a sweater dress. Cream-colored wool, high-necked, long-sleeved. It was the softest thing she had ever touched. It hugged her curves without being tight, falling to mid-calf. But she was still wearing her old coat. The thrift store pea coat with the missing button. Min-jun glanced at it, his jaw tightening, but he didn't say anything. Yet. They drove down Michigan Avenue, the magnificent mile sprawling out before them. Even in the post-Christmas gloom, it was beautiful. The trees were still wrapped in white lights. The shop windows glittered with diamonds and mannequins wearing clothes that cost a year's tuition. Zara had walked this street 1,000 times on her way to the train, head down, rushing to get out of the cold. She had never been part of it. She had always been a ghost haunting the scenery of the rich. "Where are we going?" she asked, breaking the silence. "To get you armor," Min-jun said. "I don't need armor. I don't know, groceries?" He glanced at her, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "You are entering my world, Zara. In my world, clothes are not just covering. They are a signal. They tell people who you are, what you are worth, and who protects you." He pulled the Range Rover up to the valet stand at 900 North Michigan Shops. The valet opened her door before the car even stopped rolling. "Good morning, Mr. Kang," the valet said, bowing slightly. Min-jun nodded, tossing him the keys. He walked around the car and waited for Zara. He didn't take her arm. He placed his hand on the small of her back. The heat of his palm burned through the thick wool of her dress. It was a steering gesture, a claiming gesture. "This one is mine. Make way." Inside, the mall smelled of expensive perfume and espresso. Min-jun didn't look at the map. He moved with purpose. He guided her into Max Mara. The sales associates, 2 women with perfect makeup and judgmental eyes, looked up. They saw Zara's old coat. Their expressions started to curdle into dismissal. Then they saw Min-jun. The transformation was instant. Spines straightened, smiles appeared. Fear and respect mingled in their eyes. "Mr. Kang," the manager hurried over. "We didn't know you were coming." "I need coats," he said. His voice was low, bored. "For her." He gestured to Zara. The women looked at her again. This time, they didn't see the old coat. They saw the man standing behind her, and suddenly, Zara was royalty. "Of course. What style?" Everything, Min-jun said. Cashmere, wool, nothing synthetic. Camel, black, charcoal. He pointed to a rack. And that one in cream. For the next hour, Zara was a doll. She stood on a pedestal while women fussed over her, draping her in coats that cost $4,000, $6,000, $10,000. Min-jun sat in a velvet armchair, sipping an espresso they had magically produced. He watched. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't check his watch. He watched her. His gaze was heavy, physical. It traced the line of her throat when she lifted her chin. It followed the curve of her waist when she tied a belt. "Turn around," he would say. She would turn. "No, next." Or occasionally, "Yes, keep that one." He bought 5 coats, 5. Then they went to Gucci, then Saint Laurent. He bought her sweaters, trousers, silk blouses. He didn't ask her size. He looked at her and told the sales clerk, and he was exactly right. It was overwhelming. It was suffocating. "Min-jun, this is too much," she whispered when they were alone in the elevator, heading to the next floor. "I can't pay you back for this." He looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. "I didn't ask you to pay me back." "But why? The deal was $50,000. This is another 50 on top of that." He stepped closer, crowding her into the corner of the elevator. "You are with me," he said simply. "You represent me. I will not have my fiancé walking around looking like a refugee." "I'm not your fiancé." He leaned down, his breath brushing her ear. "For this week, you are whatever I say you are." The boots. The final stop was the shoe department at Bloomingdale's. Zara hesitated at the entrance. Her feet were throbbing. The cheap boots she was wearing, the ones she'd run from the murder in, were rubbing against the raw blisters on her heels. She tried to hide her limp, but Min-jun saw everything. He led her to a quiet corner of the luxury shoe salon. He pointed to a pair of black leather combat boots, lined with shearling, chunky soles, expensive Italian leather. "Try those," he ordered. The sales assistant brought the box. Zara sat on the plush ottoman. She reached down to unzip her old boots. "Stop," Min-jun said. Zara froze. Min-jun handed his espresso to the stunned sales assistant. Then, slowly, deliberately, he sank to one knee in front of Zara. The entire department went silent. Shoppers stopped. Staff stared. This man, who radiated power like a nuclear reactor, who was clearly a king in the city, was kneeling at the feet of a girl in a thrift store coat. "Min-jun, don't!" Zara hissed, her face burning. "People are watching." "Let them watch," he murmured. He reached out. His large, gloved hands took hold of her right boot. He unzipped it. He slid it off gently. Then he reached for her sock. It was a mismatched sock. One had a hole in the toe. Zara tried to pull her foot back, shame flooding her chest. "Please don't. My feet are ugly. They're a mess." Min-jun didn't let go. He peeled the sock off. Her foot was pale, cold, and ruined. Red, angry blisters covered her heels. Calluses thickened the balls of her feet. Her toenails were unpainted because who had money for pedicures? It was a worker's foot. A survivor's foot. Min-jun didn't recoil. He took her bare foot in his hand. His leather glove was cool against her feverish skin. His thumb traced the arch of her foot, circling a particularly nasty bruise. The sensation was electric, intimate, shocking. "These are not ugly," he said, his voice low and rough, meant only for her. "These are evidence." "Evidence of what?" she breathed, mesmerized by the sight of his dark head bent over her battered foot. "Of survival. Of how hard you have fought." He looked up. His eyes were fierce, possessive. "But the fight is over, Zara." He slid her foot into the shearling-lined boot. It felt like stepping into a cloud. "I carry you from now on," he promised. "No more pain. No more walking until you bleed." He zipped the boot up. The sound was final. Zara looked at him, tears pricking her eyes. He wasn't just buying her shoes. He was tending to her wounds. He stood up, towering over her again. The moment of vulnerability gone as quickly as it had come, but the heat of his touch lingered on her skin. They returned to the penthouse as the sun was setting, painting the Chicago skyline in bruised purples and blood oranges. The tension that had started in the shoe department had been building all afternoon. It was a physical weight in the car, a static charge in the elevator. Min-jun didn't speak. He just watched her. When they got inside, the bags were sent away with staff Zara hadn't even seen. "Go shower," Min-jun said. He was standing by the bar, pouring himself a whiskey. He didn't look at her. "Get rid of the smell of the city." "What should I wear?" Zara asked. He turned then. His eyes were hooded, dark. "On the bed, there is a black box. Open it." Zara went to the master bedroom. On the massive bed sat a flat black box tied with ribbon. She opened it. Inside lay a robe, black silk, short, simple, and beneath it, nothing else. No pajamas, no underwear, just the silk. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The deal. "Let me touch you when I want." She showered. She scrubbed her skin until it was pink, using the sandalwood soap that smelled like him. She dried off. She put on the robe. It felt like water against her skin. It tied loosely at the waist, the hem hitting mid-thigh. She looked in the mirror. She looked vulnerable, available. She took a deep breath and walked out. The living room was dim. The only light came from the city grid below, casting long shadows across the floor. Min-jun was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the darkness. He had taken off his jacket. His holster was on the table. He held a glass of amber liquid. "Come here," he said. He didn't turn around. He saw her reflection in the glass. Zara walked toward him. Her bare feet were silent on the hardwood. She stopped a few feet away. "Closer." She stepped closer. "Touch me." She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his shoulder. The cashmere was soft. The muscle beneath was rock hard. Min-jun turned. He looked down at her. His gaze was a physical caress. He reached out and took the lapels of her robe. He didn't open it. He used them as handles to pull her forward. Her body collided with his, soft curves against hard angles. "Do you know how hard it was?" he whispered. "What?" "Watching you all day, in those stores, seeing other men look at you." His voice was a low growl. "Seeing the valet look at your legs, seeing the man in the elevator look at your mouth." He spun her around suddenly. Zara gasped as her back hit the cold glass of the window. Chicago sprawled below them, millions of lights witnessing her surrender. Min-jun stepped in behind her. He pressed his body against hers. He was hard, unforgivingly hard. He pressed his erection against her buttocks, grinding slow and deliberate through the thin silk. "Min-jun." "Look," he commanded, pointing at the city below. "Look at them." His breath was hot on her neck. "They are all ants. None of them matter." His hand slid around her waist. Large, warm. It splayed over her stomach, pressing her back against him. "Only this matters." His hand slid lower. He found the tie of her robe. He didn't undo it. He just slipped his hand beneath the silk. His palm grazed her bare skin. Zara's knees buckled. "You are not wearing panties," he noted, his voice thick with satisfaction. You didn't buy me any." "Because I wanted easy access." His fingers brushed the curls between her legs. She was wet, soaking wet. A small, embarrassing sound escaped her throat. "You like this," he murmured. "Don't you?" "Min-jun, please." "Please what?" His fingers dipped lower, tracing her slit. Not entering, just teasing, hovering over her clit. "You want me to take you right here," he whispered against her ear, against the glass, for the whole city to see. "Yes," she sobbed, her head falling back against his shoulder. "Yes, please." He bit her neck. Hard, a sharp sting of pain that bled instantly into pleasure. He ground against her one more time, showing her exactly what she was missing. Then he stopped. He pulled his hand away. The loss of contact was a physical shock. Zara whimpered, turning around, her eyes wide and hazy with lust. "Min-jun!" He stepped back. He adjusted his trousers, his face a mask of cruel, dark restraint. "Not yet." "Why?" She nearly screamed. Her body was aching, throbbing, empty. "Because you are still fighting it," he said calmly. "You still think this is a transaction? You think you are paying a debt." He walked toward the bedroom door. He paused, looking back at her standing by the window, flushed and trembling and desperate. "When I finally take you, Zara, you won't be paying a debt." He opened the door. "You will be begging to be owned. You will forget your own name, and the only word you will know is mine." He walked into his room and closed the door, leaving her alone in the dark, aching, wet, furious, and wanting him more than she had ever wanted to survive. December 28th. The dress was a weapon. That was the only way to describe it. It lay on the bed like a pool of liquid emeralds, dark green silk, backless, with a neckline that plunged deep and a slit that rose dangerously high on the thigh. Beside it lay a diamond choker, a single, solitaire diamond suspended on a thin platinum chain. Zara touched the silk. It was cool to the touch, heavy. "Put it on," Min-jun had said before disappearing into his dressing room. "Tonight, you are not a guest. You are a statement." She slipped into the dress. It fit perfectly, of course. Everything he bought her fit as if he had memorized her measurements with his hands alone. She fastened the choker. The diamond rested in the hollow of her throat, a cold, glittering weight. She looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Zara the waitress. She wasn't the girl who counted pennies for the L train. She was a queen, but a queen in a gilded cage. The door opened. Min-jun walked in. He stopped. He was wearing a tuxedo, not a rental, a bespoke tuxedo with a velvet jacket in midnight blue. He looked devastating. His eyes swept over her, starting at her feet and traveling slowly up the slit in her dress, lingering on the curve of her hip, the exposed expanse of her back. The air in the room grew heavy, charged. He walked behind her. He didn't touch her skin. He just leaned in, his chest brushing her bare back. "Dangerous," he murmured against her ear. "Is that good?" "It is necessary." He met her eyes in the mirror. "Where we are going, weakness is a death sentence. You look untouchable." He placed a hand on her waist, his thumb pressed into her skin. "Except for me." Dinner wasn't just a meal, it was a performance. Min-jun had rented the private gallery. The walls were dark, the lighting focused entirely on the table. The food came in courses that looked like art projects, a floating, edible balloon, a painting made of dessert. It was the kind of place Marcus had dreamt of going, but couldn't even afford to look at online. And Zara was here, with a killer. "You aren't eating," Min-jun noted. He cut a piece of Wagyu beef. He didn't eat it himself. He held the fork to her lips. "Open." Zara hesitated. The intimacy of being fed was overwhelming. "Open, Zara." She opened her mouth. He fed her. The meat melted on her tongue, rich and decadent. Min-jun watched her swallow, his eyes dark. Good girl. The praise hit her lower belly like a physical blow. Why are we here, Min-jun? She asked, her voice low. Why the dress? Why the private room? You said we were hiding. Min-jun took a sip of his wine. Hiding implies fear. We are not hiding. We are waiting. For what? For the rats to come out. As if on cue, the heavy oak doors of the private room opened. The maitre d' looked terrified. He was trying to block the way, stammering apologies. 3 men pushed past him. They didn't look like the diners in the main room. They wore suits that cost money but lacked taste. They smelled of stale tobacco and aggression. Min-jun didn't turn around. He didn't even put down his wine glass. Petrov? He said calmly, addressing the reflection in the window. I didn't know the Russian mob appreciated molecular gastronomy. The lead man, Petrov, smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and eyes that looked like dead fish. We appreciate knowing where our enemies are, Kang. Petrov walked closer to the table. His 2 guards flanked him. Min-jun remained seated. Relaxed, the picture of arrogance. I am not your enemy, Petrov, unless you make yourself one. You killed Lee? Petrov said. At the park, on Christmas Eve. Lee was stealing from me. It was an internal matter? Perhaps. Petrov's gaze shifted. It landed on Zara. She froze. She felt the blood drain from her face. Petrov looked her up and down, a sneer curling his lip. But who is this? The witness? He took a step closer to her chair. My sources say a girl was running from the park, a waitress. Is this her? He reached out, his hand moving toward Zara's chin. She looks nervous. Maybe she saw something she shouldn't have. Maybe she is a loose end. Snap. Min-jun moved. 1 second he was seated. The next, he was standing between Zara and Petrov. He caught Petrov's wrist in midair. He didn't just hold it. He squeezed. Zara heard the distinct creak of bones grinding together. Petrov grimaced, trying to pull back, but Min-jun was immovable. Do not, Min-jun said, his voice dropping to a subterranean growl. Touch her. She is a liability, Kang. Petrov spat, wincing. If the feds get her, she is not a liability. Min-jun shoved Petrov's hand away with disgust. He turned and placed a hand on Zara's shoulder. His grip was iron-hard, possessive. She is not a witness. He pulled her up from the chair. Zara's legs were shaking, but Min-jun's arm banded around her waist, holding her up. He pulled her flush against his side. Her hip dug into his thigh. This is Zara Williams, Min-jun announced, his voice ringing with absolute conviction. My fiancé. The room went silent. Petrov blinked. Fiancé? We marry on New Year's Eve. Min-jun looked down at Zara. His eyes were fierce, commanding. Play the part, they screamed. Show them, Jagiya. He cupped her face with both hands, and he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It wasn't a question. It was a claim. His mouth crashed onto hers, devouring her gasp. His tongue swept into her mouth, tasting the wine and the fear. One hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head back to deepen the angle. The other hand slid down her back, pressing her hips into his. Zara grabbed his lapels to keep from falling. Her mind screamed, "It's a lie! It's a show!" But her body didn't care. Her body melted. She kissed him back, desperate and needy. She tasted his power. She tasted his protection. For a moment, the Russians didn't exist. The restaurant didn't exist. There was only Min-jun, and the way he was branding her with his mouth. He broke the kiss slowly, leaving her lips swollen and wet. He kept his arm around her, turning back to Petrov. "She is family," Min-jun said, his voice ice-cold and final. "And you know the rules, Petrov. You touch family. I burn your house down with you inside it." He stared the Russian down. The threat hung in the air, heavy and real. Petrov looked at Zara, at her flushed face, at the way she was clinging to Min-jun's jacket. He saw the diamond choker, the dress, the possession. He nodded once, a stiff, jerky motion. "My apologies," Petrov muttered. "Congratulations." He signaled his men. They turned and left. Min-jun didn't relax until the door clicked shut. "Sit down," he said quietly. Zara collapsed into her chair. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. "Fiancé?" she whispered. Min-jun sat opposite her. He picked up his wineglass. His hand was perfectly steady. "It was the only way to ensure your safety. If you are a random witness, you are a target. If you are my wife, you are untouchable." "But it's a lie." Min-jun looked at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable pools. "For now." The silence in the Range Rover was suffocating. Zara stared out the window as they sped down Lakeshore Drive. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and red. She touched her lips. They still tingled. "You kissed me?" she said. It wasn't a question. Min-jun kept his eyes on the road. "I had to make it convincing." "You made it convincing, all right." He glanced at her. "Did you hate it?" The question hung in the air. Zara looked at his hands on the steering wheel. Strong, capable. The hands that had crushed a man's wrist to protect her. "No," she whispered. "I didn't hate it." Min-jun's grip on the wheel tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Good." He took the turn onto Ohio Street a little too fast. "Because I didn't hate it either." The penthouse. They rode the elevator in silence. The tension was a physical thing now, a live wire connecting them. When the doors opened, Min-jun didn't go to the bar. He walked straight to her. He backed her up against the wall of the foyer. He didn't touch her. He just caged her in with his arms on either side of her head. "Do you know what you did tonight?" he asked, his voice rough. I played along." "You kissed me back." He leaned in, inhaling the scent of her neck. "You kissed me like you wanted to belong to me." Zara closed her eyes. "Maybe I do." The confession slipped out before she could stop it. Min-jun went still. "Be careful, Zara," he warned, his lips brushing the sensitive skin below her ear. "Do not say things you do not mean. I am not a man who lets things go." "I'm not lying." She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "I felt safe. With you. When those men came in, I wasn't scared because you were there." Min-jun looked at her with an intensity that terrified her. "Safety is not the only thing I want to give you." His hand moved down to her waist. He pulled her hips against his. "But tonight we stop here." "Why?" she breathed. "Because when I take you," he said, stepping back, putting cold distance between them, "it won't be to prove a point to the Russians." He turned and walked toward his office. "It will be because you begged for it." He slammed the door. Zara stood in the hallway, the diamond choker heavy on her throat. She realized with a jolt of panic that the lie wasn't the scary part. The scary part was how badly she wanted it to be the truth. She touched the spot on her neck where his breath had been. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was falling in love with her captor. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. December 29th. The blizzard hit Chicago like a hammer. By noon, the city grid below the penthouse had vanished, swallowed by a wall of swirling white. The wind howled against the reinforced glass, a low, mournful animal sound that made the silence inside the apartment feel even heavier. The penthouse was a snow globe suspended in the gray sky. Beautiful, isolated, trapped. Min-jun had been distant all day. He had locked himself in his office at 8 a.m., and Zara hadn't seen him since. She could hear him occasionally, low, rapid-fire Korean spoken into a phone, the sound of pacing, the sharp click of a lighter opening and closing. Zara spent the day wandering the sprawling living room, the emerald dress from last night replaced by the oversized cashmere sweater and leggings he'd bought her. She touched the cold glass of the window, watching the snow pile up on the balcony. She felt restless. Her body was still humming from the night before, from the kiss at the restaurant, from the tension in the hallway. Maybe I do, she had admitted it. She wanted to belong to him. And now, the waiting was agony. At 6 p.m., the office door opened. Zara turned from the window. Min-jun walked out. He looked wrecked. His hair, usually perfect, was messy, as if he'd been running his hands through it. He had discarded his jacket and tie. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, and on his left side, a dark crimson stain was blooming across the white fabric. Zara's breath hitched. "You're hurt." Min-jun didn't stop. He walked toward the bar, his gait slightly uneven. "It is nothing." "Nothing? You're bleeding through your shirt." He poured a whiskey. His hand wasn't steady. "A scratch from yesterday. The stitches pulled." Zara crossed the room before she made the conscious decision to move. She reached him as he downed the whiskey in one swallow. "Let me see." He turned away. "I said it is nothing, Zara. Go back to your room." "No?" She grabbed his arm, his good arm. His muscles were rock hard under her fingers. "I was a nursing student for 3 years, Min-jun. I know the difference between a scratch and a hemorrhage. Let me see." He looked down at her. His eyes were glassy, fever bright. He looked exhausted. Not the invincible king of Chicago. Just a man who was tired of fighting. "You should not touch me right now," he warned, his voice a low rumble. "Why, are you going to bite?" "Because I do not have the control to stop myself if you start." The threat hung in the air, heavy and erotic. Zara didn't let go. "Sit down." She pushed him toward the leather sofa. To her surprise, he let her. He sank onto the cushions with a heavy sigh, his head falling back. Zara ran to the bathroom, grabbing the first aid kit she'd seen under the sink. When she returned, Min-jun had his eyes closed. She knelt between his legs. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the buttons of his shirt. "Tell me if I hurt you," she whispered. He didn't open his eyes. "You couldn't." She undid the buttons, one by one. She peeled the fabric back. Zara sucked in a breath. His torso was a masterpiece of violence. She had felt the muscles through his clothes, but seeing them was different. He was carved from stone, broad chest, ridged abdomen, the V-line disappearing into his black trousers. But it was the scars that held her gaze. A jagged line across his collarbone, a burn mark on his shoulder, and tattoos, intricate dark ink swirling around the old wounds. A tiger clawing its way up his ribs, a dragon coiled around his bicep, and there, on his left side, was the fresh wound, a long, angry gash. The stitches had indeed popped, and blood was sluggishly weeping down his skin. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice trembling as she uncapped the antiseptic. "It doesn't matter," he rasped. "It matters to me." "They are dead, Zara. That is all that matters." She dabbed the wound. Min-jun hissed through his teeth. His hands gripped the leather of the sofa, knuckles turning white. Sorry. Just finish it." She worked quickly, cleaning the blood, applying fresh butterfly bandages, taping it closed. Her fingers brushed his skin. He was burning up, not a fever, just heat. He radiated it like a furnace. "There," she whispered, smoothing the tape down. "All done." She sat back on her heels, looking at his chest. Without thinking, she reached out and traced the white scar over his heart. "Does this one hurt?" Min-jun's eyes snapped open. They were black, dilated. "No." "What about this one?" She traced the dragon's tail. "No." He looked at her hands on his skin. Then he looked at her face. "You are shaking," he said. "I'm scared." "Of me?" "For you." She met his gaze, stripping away her defenses. "I don't want you to die, Min-jun. I don't want you to be hurt." Something in him snapped. You could hear it, like a cable parting under too much tension. He grabbed her wrist. "Then stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you want to save me." He pulled her forward, hauling her up until she was straddling his lap. "I don't need saving, Zara." His hand tangled in her hair, pulling her head back, exposing her throat. "I need this." He buried his face in her neck. He inhaled deeply, like a drowning man finding air. "You smell like me?" He groaned. "My soap, my clothes." "I am yours," she whispered. The words were the key. Min-jun stood up, taking her with him. He didn't care about his ribs. He didn't care about the blood. "Bedroom," he growled. "Now." He didn't carry her gently. He marched her into the master suite. He kicked the door shut. He pulled her into the massive ensuite bathroom. "Strip," he commanded. He turned on the shower. Steam billowed out, instantly fogging the mirrors. Zara hesitated, her hands on the hem of her sweater. Min-jun didn't wait. He reached out and pulled the sweater over her head. He shoved her leggings down. He left her standing there, naked and shivering, while he stripped off his ruined shirt and trousers. He was fully nude now. He was magnificent and terrifying. He pulled her under the spray. The water was hot, scalding. It mingled with the blood on his side, swirling pink down the drain. Min-jun grabbed the bar of soap. He lathered his hands. He washed her. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive. His soapy hands slid over her breasts, weighing them, teasing the nipples until they were hard peaks. He washed her stomach, his thumbs pressing into her hips. "You are so soft," he murmured against her wet ear. "So fragile." He spun her around, pressing her palms against the cool tile wall. "Arch your back." "Min-jun." "Arch." She did. He pressed himself against her from behind. She could feel him, thick and heavy and demanding against her lower back. His hand came around, fingers finding the heat between her legs. She was already slick. "You are so wet," he groaned. "You have been waiting for this." "Yes," she gasped, her head falling forward, water streaming down her face. "All day, all week." He entered her with one smooth, powerful thrust. Zara screamed his name. It wasn't pain. It was a fullness so complete it felt like being remade. He filled every inch of her. "Mine," he growled, biting the sensitive cord of her neck. "You belong to me, Zara. Every breath, every shiver, every drop." "Yes," she sobbed. "Yours. I'm yours." He moved in a rhythmic, punishing cadence. The water beat down on them. The steam swirled around them. Min-jun's hand left her hip and clamped around her throat. Not choking, just holding. Controlling. "Who saved you?" he demanded, thrusting harder. "You did." "Who owns you?" "You do." Min-jun. "You." He pulled out abruptly. Zara nearly collapsed, her knees weak. He shut off the water. He grabbed a towel, wrapped it around her, and picked her up. He carried her out of the steam, throwing her onto the massive bed. He crawled over her, water dripping from his hair onto her chest. He looked like a sea god, a monster from the deep. He pried her legs apart. "Look at me," he commanded. He pushed inside her again, slow this time, grinding. Zara's hands clawed at the sheets. The friction was excruciating, perfect. Min-jun leaned down, bracing his weight on his forearms, trapping her. His eyes locked onto hers. "I am going to keep you," he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a sentence. "I am going to bind you to me so tight you can never leave." He thrust deep, hitting a spot that made her vision white out. "Take it," he praised, his voice dropping to a rough purr. "Good girl. Take all of it." The endearment shattered her. The pleasure coiled in her belly, tight and hot. "Min-jun, please, I'm close." "Come for me." He didn't speed up. He kept that maddening, grinding pace. "Come on my cock, Zara. Show me you're mine." She shattered. It ripped through her, a blinding release that arched her back off the mattress. She cried out, her inner muscles clamping down on him. Min-jun watched her unravel. He watched the way her eyes rolled back, the way her chest heaved. Then, with a guttural roar, he let go. He drove into her, hard and deep, pouring himself into her. He didn't pull out. He didn't hesitate. He stayed buried inside her, riding out the aftershocks, binding them together in the most primal way possible. "Mine," he breathed against her lips. "Forever." He collapsed on top of her, heavy and warm. The room was silent except for their ragged breathing and the wind howling outside. Zara lay there, pinned beneath him. She felt his heart hammering against her own. She felt the sting of his bite mark on her shoulder. She reached up, her fingers threading through his damp hair. "You're bleeding again," she whispered, looking at the bandage on his side. Min-jun lifted his head. He kissed her. Softly this time. Tenderly. "I don't care." He rolled off her, pulling her into his side, wrapping the duvet around them both. He trapped her legs with his. He trapped her arm with his. A cage of warmth. "You aren't leaving," he said into the darkness. "I know. Even when the week is up, even when the contract ends." His arm tightened across her waist. "I am tearing that contract up." Zara rested her cheek on his chest, listening to the steady thump-thump of his heart. She thought about her empty apartment, the debt, the cold. Then she thought about the man who had burned her uniform, who had bought her armor, who had just worshipped her body like it was holy ground. "Okay," she whispered. Min-jun kissed the top of her head. "Okay?" "I'm not going anywhere, Min-jun." She closed her eyes. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." For the first time in her life, Zara Williams fell asleep feeling completely, terrifyingly safe. 11/11, December 31st. Morning. The morning of New Year's Eve broke bright and blindingly white. The blizzard had passed, leaving Chicago buried under 2 feet of snow. The sun reflected off the drifts, turning the world into a diamond. Inside the penthouse, it was warm. Zara woke up alone in the massive bed. She reached out, her hand finding the cold sheets where Min-jun had been. Panic flared instantly, a holdover from her old life where good things always disappeared in the morning. Then she heard it. The sound of a voice. Low, lethal. She grabbed the silk robe, the black one, and padded out to the living room. Min-jun was standing by the window. He was fully dressed in a tactical black turtleneck and trousers. His holster was strapped to his chest. He was on the phone. He wasn't speaking English. He wasn't speaking Korean. He was speaking Russian. Zara froze. Min-jun listened to the voice on the other end. His expression was terrifying. It was the face of the man she had seen in the park. The executioner. Da, Min-jun said. Bring him to me. He hung up. He stood there for a moment, staring at the phone like he wanted to crush it. Then he turned and saw her. His face changed. The mask slipped, revealing a raw, desperate fear she had never seen before. Get dressed, he said. Min-jun, what's happening? Pack a bag, only essentials. My driver is downstairs. He will take you to the private airfield in Gary. The jet is waiting. Zara took a step back. What? No. Zara, listen to me. He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. You have to leave. Now. Why? Who was on the phone? Berghoff. He found a leak. Min-jun's jaw clenched. Your ex-boyfriend. Marcus? Marcus went to the Russians. He told them everything. He told them you saw the execution. He told them where you are. Rage, hot and bitter, flooded Zara's chest. Marcus. Of course. He had taken her money, broken her heart, and now he was selling her life. So, they're coming here? They are already moving. They think if they take you, they have leverage over me. He steered her toward the bedroom. But they are wrong, because you will be in the air. You will go to my safe house in Seoul. You will be safe. What about you? Min-jun stopped. I am staying. To fight them? To end them? No. Zara dug her heels into the hardwood floor. No, I'm not leaving. Min-jun looked at her like she was insane. This is not a debate, Zara. Men are coming here to kill us. I can fight them, but I cannot fight them if I am worried about you. Then don't worry about me. Give me a gun. A gun? He laughed, a harsh barking sound. You are a waitress, Zara, not a soldier. I'm a survivor, and I'm not leaving you. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You said I belong to you. You said you keep what's yours. Well, I'm yours, Min-jun. You don't get to ship me off to Korea just because things get hard. Min-jun stared at her. He looked at the fire in her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. If you stay, he whispered, you might see things you cannot unsee. You might see the monster in the daylight. I've seen the monster, she said, thinking of the shower, the bed, the way he had claimed her. I love the monster. Min-jun closed his eyes. He pulled her into a crushing hug. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in. You are a fool, he groaned. My beautiful, brave fool. The elevator chimed. Min-jun's head snapped up. It's too late, he said. The emotion vanished, replaced by cold calculation. They're in the lobby. He shoved her toward the wall safe, the one hidden behind the painting. Open it! What? The panic room. Behind the safe. The code is 1224, Christmas Eve. Zara punched in the code. The wall slid back, revealing a steel door. Get inside, Min-jun ordered. Lock it. Do not open it unless you hear my voice. Min-jun. Go. He shoved her inside. The steel door slammed shut. Zara was in darkness. Then, a monitor flickered to life on the wall. A security feed of the living room. She watched. Min-jun stood in the center of the room. He checked his gun. He racked the slide. He looked at the camera, at her, and touched 2 fingers to his lips. Then the penthouse doors blew open. It wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. 6 men stormed in. Berghoff was leading them. And behind them, Marcus. Marcus looked terrified. He was wearing a cheap suit, clutching a briefcase that probably contained his payment for betraying her. Where is she? Berghoff screamed. Min-jun didn't speak. He fired. The first 2 men dropped before they cleared the foyer. Zara clamped her hands over her mouth, watching the silent black and white violence play out on the screen. Min-jun moved like water. He ducked behind the marble island. He fired. He moved. He was outnumbered, but he was in his territory. He took out 3 more men with precise, efficient shots. Petrov realized he was losing. He grabbed Marcus, using him as a human shield. "Stop!" Petrov yelled. "Or the boy dies!" Min-jun stood up from behind the sofa. He lowered his gun. "Go ahead," Min-jun said. His lips moved on the screen, and Zara could read the words perfectly. "Kill him! You save me the trouble!" Marcus screamed. "Min-jun, we had a deal! You said—" Petrov shoved Marcus forward. Marcus stumbled. Min-jun raised his gun. He didn't shoot Marcus. He shot Petrov, right between the eyes. The Russian boss fell backward, dead before he hit the floor. Silence. Only Marcus was left standing, shaking, crying. Min-jun walked toward him. Marcus fell to his knees. He was begging, pleading. Zara couldn't hear the words, but she knew them. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please." Min-jun stood over him. He looked at the camera again. At Zara. He wanted her to see this. He leaned down and whispered something to Marcus. Then he stood up, holstered his gun, and walked to the panoramic window. He opened the sliding glass door. The wind howled into the room. He pointed out. Marcus looked at the door. Then at Min-jun. He realized he was being given a choice. Jump or be shot. Marcus scrambled to his feet. He ran for the door. But he didn't jump. He tried to run past Min-jun to the elevator. Min-jun didn't even look. He just extended his arm. Clotheslined Marcus. Marcus hit the floor hard. Min-jun grabbed him by the collar of his cheap suit. He dragged him to the balcony. He lifted him, and he threw him over the rail. Zara closed her eyes. It was done. The threat was gone. The safe clicked. The door opened. Zara stumbled out into the living room. It smelled of gunpowder and copper. Bodies lay on the floor. Min-jun was standing by the open balcony door, the wind whipping his clothes. He turned. He was covered in blood. It splattered his face, his hands, his tactical gear. He looked terrifying. "Are you afraid?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Zara walked over the bodies. She walked straight to him. She took his bloody face in her hands. "No," she said, and she kissed him. Most women would run at the sight of blood. Most would have taken the private jet and disappeared. But Zara stayed. She chose the monster because he was the only one who never lied to her. If you would abandon him when things get hard, stop watching now. This story is for the loyal. Drop a yes in the comments if you're ride or die. December 31st. Night. The penthouse had been cleaned. It was a miracle of money and power. Within 3 hours, the bodies were gone. The blood was scrubbed. The bullet holes were patched and painted. It was as if the violence had never happened. Except for the way Min-jun held her. He hadn't let go of her since the afternoon. Now, it was 10 p.m. They were in the master bedroom. Min-jun stood behind her in front of the full-length mirror. He was wearing a fresh tuxedo, black velvet, satin lapels. Zara was wearing white. It wasn't just a gown, it was a statement. Silk satin, strapless, hugging every curve before flaring out at the floor. It looked like a wedding dress. Min-jun fastened the diamond choker around her neck. "You look—" He stopped, his voice catching. "You look like mine." "I am yours," she said to his reflection. "Good, because tonight I tell the world." Navy Pier. The grand ballroom was a sea of crystals and champagne. Every crime lord, politician, and power player in Chicago was there for the New Year's Eve gala. When Min-jun walked in with Zara on his arm, the room went silent. They knew what happened this morning. News traveled fast in the underworld. Petrov was dead. The Russians were broken. And the waitress? She was walking beside the king, wearing $50,000 worth of silk and diamonds, head held high. They didn't look at her with pity anymore. They looked at her with fear. Min-jun led her through the crowd. He didn't stop for small talk. He led her straight to the private balcony overlooking Lake Michigan. It was snowing lightly again. A man was waiting for them, an older man in a judge's robe, and two witnesses, Min-jun's lieutenants. Zara looked at Min-jun. "What is this?" Min-jun took her hands. "I told you on Christmas Eve," he said, his thumb brushing her ring finger. "I told you that you belong to me." "Yes. But possession isn't enough, Zara. I want permanence." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a ring. It wasn't a modest diamond. It was a rock, an emerald-cut diamond that caught the light of the distant city. "I didn't save you to set you free," he whispered. "I saved you to bind you to me." "Min-jun, marry me, right now, before the year ends." He looked at her with such raw vulnerability it broke her heart. "Start the new year as my wife, as Mrs. Kang." Zara looked at the ring, then at him, the man who had burned her uniform, who had washed her hair, who had killed for her. "Yes," she said. The ceremony was short, 5 minutes. "Do you take this man?" "I do." "Do you take this woman?" "I have already taken her," Min-jun said, his eyes burning into hers, "and I will never give her back." The judge pronounced them husband and wife. Min-jun didn't wait. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. At that exact moment, the first firework exploded over the lake. Boom! Gold! Boom! Red! The crowd inside cheered. The year was ending. But for Zara, life was just beginning. January 1st. The sun rose over a quiet city. Zara woke up in the penthouse. Her hand felt heavy. She lifted it. The diamond ring glittered in the morning light. She sat up. Min-jun was already awake. He was sitting in the chair by the window, watching her. He held a piece of paper in his hand. "What is that?" she asked, her voice raspy from sleep and other things. Min-jun stood up and walked to the bed. He handed her the paper. It was a bank transfer receipt, paid in full. Student loans, 0.0. Credit cards, 0.0. "I told you," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "On January 1st, you walk away debt-free." Zara stared at the paper, then at him. "But I'm not walking away," she said. Min-jun smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile with pure, unburdened happiness. "I know." He crawled into the bed, pulling her into his arms. "Happy New Year, Mrs. Kang." Zara kissed him. "Happy New Year, boss." They found their forever in the ashes of her old life. They survived the winter, but not everyone gets saved. Right now, on your screen, is a story about a woman who made the wrong choice. A woman who ran when she should have stayed. Do not let her story go unheard. Click this video now. Because in this world, blood may stain hands, but love stains the soul.